colleagues, now we continue with the next session. My name is Zoran Eric, and I extend my gratitude to the organizer for inviting me to moderate this challenging panel on visual arts in the framework of climate crisis. This is really kind of intriguing topic and very demanding one. So I would like to thank also all the participants of today's panel. And the session, starting with Kika Kyriakou, she will be the first speaker, and then Roman Keller, who will be the second speaker, and Mirko Nikolic, who will be the third. So I will briefly introduce each of the speakers before their presentations. They will have all some kind of, let's say, PowerPoint or visual presentations. And afterwards, you will feel free to ask one or two direct, immediate questions related to the presentations. So first, I would like to introduce Kika, who will be starting our panel. She's an artistic director of the Polygreen Culture and Art Initiative, and she's also curator of its collection. So this will be maybe the basic framework of her talk to talk about this initiative and institution. In her practice, she's working as curator, also producer and like manager of many cultural events and art projects dealing with sustainability, but also with moving images and design, and researcher as well, a writer, about to finish her PhD at the University of Athens. And so one thing that is interesting, she's also a member of the Global Climate Storytellers Network. Maybe we'll learn more about it. And a nominator for the Earthshot Prize Awards, which is something we should really kind of put an emphasis on as well. So welcome, Kika. And please, you're the first. So the floor is yours, as they say. But now we're back into virtual space. So yeah.
Thank you, Zoran.
Please.
It's a pleasure to be here with you all. So let me share my presentation, first of all. So as you mentioned, I'm the artistic director of Polygreen Culture and Art Initiative. My background is a curator, and I'm also a PhD candidate in the University of Athens. Regarding my curatorial practice, one of the first projects that I've undertaken in Athens was a partnership with Art21, a cultural organization based in New York. I organized for them a series of screening events and discussions back at the time, focusing on contemporary art. And one of the artists that we presented was Mary Mattingly, New Jersey-based artist, who from the beginning of her career focused on the carbon footprint of her art practice. So this is actually one of the first artists to do something like that. And exactly this sort of environmental concerns are the topics that we deal with in PCAI, Polygreen Culture and Art Initiative. PCAI aims to promote environmental awareness through new art commission synergies and educational workshops. It is a non-profit organization that was founded by an environmental group of companies, Polyeco and Polygreen. And it is an organization that has participated in international exhibitions, events, conferences on the topic of art and the environment. We've also partnered with institutions and other cultural organizations like Serpentine in London, the British Councils, and the Sarsa Biennale from time to time. Our core belief is that art can function as an essential action tool and a source for discussion around crucial environmental issues. As you mentioned, we've been a nominator for the last 2 years for the Earthshot Prize. This is a very prestigious environmental award, a UK-based award that in its board includes well-known members like Sir Richard Attenborough, and it is actually an award that aims to find new and effective solutions to crucial environmental problems. So PCI, along with other nominators from around the world, gets to suggest nominees for the particular prize. The center of our activities is the PCI art collection. The art collection is based on commissions and on moving image and contemporary art, and we actually provide artists with the means and resources to create artworks inspired by urgent environmental issues. The PCI artworks travel frequently to international museums, exhibitions, and biennales. Around the collection now, we've developed an annual visual arts program of residencies, exhibitions, conferences, and cultural events. One of our exhibitions that took place actually during the pandemic was an online exhibition that focused on the topic of the Anthropocene that included new commissions. We've also organized another exhibition during the pandemic in partnership with the Onassis Foundation here in Greece and the British Council. The title was Dematerializing the Art Object, inspired by the well-known Lucy Lippard essay. And it is an exhibition that focused on materials and waste. And last but not least is a project that is now running. It is a hybrid program called Sheltered Gardens. It is an exhibition that focuses on the topics of diversity, inclusivity, and ecology. A program that took place actually in the Botanical Garden of Athens, and it also takes place online. And it is an exhibition that included a series of performances, dance performances, reading events. Thousands of people visited the exhibition in the garden. And also now it is an exhibition that you can still visit on its digital format. PCI has also quite recently acquired a renovated architectural monument in the area of Delphi. It is the former touristic pavilion of Delphi, where we get to organize a series of events, exhibitions, and performances focusing on the topic of environmental awareness. We had the chance to work with the Takis Foundation here in Greece and the Fidelity Art Collection. And this is an open space for synergies and for proposals of our partners. This is some images from one of the performances that was hosted there last summer. Quite recently, we also go to partner with Serpentine and Mubi for the co-production of the film A Letter from Iene by visual artist Manthia Diawara. This is a film that focuses on the environmental problem that people from Iene and the communities of Iene have been facing throughout the years. And it is a film that has been already presented in London in Serpentine and will now be presented in Greece in 2023. We've been partnering with Serpentine quite frequently. And we've also worked, for instance, with Hans Ulrich Hobrich, the artistic director of Serpentine, for some of our artist residency programs. The artist in residence programs of PCI actually started in 2018. We announced an open call where we invited visual artists to participate in the particular program. We received more than 400 applications at the time. And this is actually a program that took place in Athens, and it is a program in the intersection between contemporary art, science, and environmental awareness. Another residency program of ours took place on the island of Tilos in Greece. It is a residency program that actually focused on the topic of zero waste. The Tilos Island is very well known because it is an island that quite recently implemented a zero waste program. And on that occasion, we got to invite a designer duo and an artist duo on the island to interact with the local community, to talk about the community's experience on the concept of zero waste, and also to create a series of new art pieces and design items focusing on the thematics of upcycling and waste management. Another residency program of ours is a program that is taking place in the context of the Stronger Peripheries European program. This is a program that we announced through an open call. It was an open call for performing artists from Greece. And it's a program that is actually co-produced by Creative Europe. It is carried out by 14 cultural and academic institutions, and all of them are members of the Southern Coalition. So after the selection process, Eva Giannakopoulou, a performing artist and a visual artist from Greece, was selected, and she's currently participating in the residency program taking place in Portugal, Italy, and Greece. The outcome of the residency is a new performance that will be premiered in Athens on January 27, and it is a performance that focuses on the topic of ecofeminism, and to be more specific, on the issue of hydrofeminism. So in a nutshell, these are some of the things we've done in the past. These are some of the projects that we are working currently. For more information and for all the open calls and all our forthcoming projects, you can all, of course, visit our website. Feel free to contact me as well. So, Zoran, thank you once again for the invite, and I truly look forward to hearing the rest of the speakers.
Great, thank you very much, Kika. It's been really comprehensive, and there are so many activities. It's like really amazing what achievements have we made during this course of the years. And yes, if there are any immediate questions from the public, we'll see it in chat. Please go ahead. Just, yeah, don't be shy. And yeah, but we will have time for, of course, there are some praises, yeah, most inspiring, great work, etc. But I mean, if we don't have really an immediate question, we can then move on, and we'll collect all the questions afterwards for the debate between three of you and me as moderator. So thanks. The next speaker is Roman Kella. And yes, hello, Roman. It's been a while. Nice to see you again. And I have to say, we're presenting Roman, that he's working together with Christina Hemauer since 2003. Their first common research topic was the concept of energy, which they investigated for many years. Later on, one of the main areas of their interest was the history of oil, and then some kind of, let's say, alternatives to this kind, let's say, oil policy or as the main source of energy. So notably, the alternative was solar energy that they investigated. And the artist in the era of post-petralism, as they called it, used a project, and even they produced a manifesto, I would say, and a performance in 2006, where they promoted some kind of ideas and new ideas how to relate to those problems. And in recent years, they've been examining the human-nature relationship in the age of climate change. But from all these exhibitions and international presentations and awards and fellowships, I would like to discern maybe one grant that is the most interesting. That is some kind of research award at CERN. So this combines this kind of approach towards scientific access, and I will give the floor to Roman to tell us more about their initiatives. He's now representing both, yes, I think the duo, yeah. So please, Roman, go ahead.
Welcome, and thanks for the invitation, and sorry to be alone. Christina is teaching, so she can't be with me today. So yes, we started to work together in 2003, and as already mentioned, we heralded a new chapter in art history called post-petralism in 2006. We worked together with an actor to perform the speech in an open art space in Zurich. And I think it was very important to us, we're still profiting from this decision to write a manifesto. Even some of the things are not really, we feel not so happy anymore, but still most of the things is still the structure or still the background for today. After the speech, we invited some post-petrol projects like a solar disco and some other artists we knew. And then afterwards, we put this plate outside of this kind of garden or courtyard, And this stayed for many years. It was just recently taken away because the school that it was the art school of Zurich who run this art space. They went to another place, so they had to give up the space, and with that the plate was away. During the research we did for the manifesto, we happened to run into a nice or interesting story. We found out that Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the west wing of the White House, and Ronald Reagan took them down. And the most interesting thing about this was that the college where they remained, well, after 10 years, they were given to a school. They wanted to auction some of the panels, and we thought, wow, we can get in touch with them. And well, it later came out that they're not going to sell some of them, but we agreed to bring 2 of the panels to the one to the Jimmy Carter Library and Museum, and one to the Museum of American History in Washington. So this was the last moment before we handed over the panel to the Jimmy Carter Library and museum. And you see, it's a thermal, it's a very basic solar panel. We wanted to see if it still works. This ended in a solo show in 2007 in Switzerland, and for the opening we invited Jimmy Carter. He didn't come, but his secretary sent us an email with an interview date. So that was crazy, because we knew that even Al Gore didn't get an interview. Normally he just doesn't do it for other people to give interviews. He only gives interviews to his own project. And then the idea started to do a documentary essay. This came out in 2010, so we took us some time to cut and finish the movie. And the idea was, of course, to have a broader audience than with this solo exhibition. So this is this chapter of the Jimmy Carter panel. And then here is a project we did, I think, in 2008. And I mentioned it's not a very big project compared to the Carter movie. We were invited to an exhibition which was called, let me see, Moral Imagination, Art and Climate. And for this exhibition, we asked biologists from the University of Basel what tree is going to leave the lowlands of Switzerland the earliest. And he answered it's going to be the spruce, which is going to go north and up into the mountains. And so we planted one spruce in the garden of this museum and put a loudspeaker, and a friend of us sang the well-known song, I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas. And it's a funny thing, because the museum bought the piece and it's still running. It's a bit strange, because we decided that the tree has to be in a kind of human size. They had to dig it out and plant, I think, 3 times a new tree. It's a bit spooky, to be honest, you know, how we treat nature in this project, but that was the decision, and I think it's good to have it, because this is the size of a Christmas tree, basically. So the work is called Summer Tree Dream, and yeah, I think I have it.
I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones I used to know, where the treetops glisten and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow.
Stop here. Then I make a rather big jump, because I think the time is short. we saw that this is 2014 already. We somehow, it's a bit more complicated, got interested in this instrument. Well, to go back to the last project, I was mentioning it because we always work together with scientists in one form or the other, and that's I think that's something we always like to do, and we still very much like to do. And here we got interested in this 17th century, no, 18th century measurement device for the color of the sky. We went to the museum, it's in Geneva, where they have some of them, the last remaining. It was developed by Swiss scientists, early scientists in Geneva, called Maurice de Saussure. And we first wanted to reproduce it, but then we saw it's really dirty and the colors are shaded. So we went back to the manual of Saussure and tried to do it as he did, with dipping in colors and with the same pigments. And it took us quite some time, to be honest. The eye is very sensitive to color differences. And then we went, of course, back to the places where Saussure who was famous, because he spent some money for the first crew to go on Mont Blanc, you know, the highest mountain in, I think, Europe. And then he was the second, in the second group he was, and there he did these measurements. And the reason why he did it, he wanted to show that the sky is bluer or darker in the heights and grayer in the valley. And he did it because he had somebody doing measurements at the same time in different places. And of course, he was true. So we also could kind of recolor his scientific results, you know, with the colors. On the top line, you see it on the Mont Blanc. This is not on the top of Mont Blanc; it's a little bit lower. And yes, we asked some scientists, some climate scientists in Zurich, how the color of the sky is going to change with climate change, or if. And they were answering, that was very interesting to us. They were answering, we already changed the color of the sky since in the 20th century. We don't know how the color of the sky is going to change due to climate change. It's probably depends on the place also. And that was most important, we're not measuring it, because color of the sky is no scientific value which is relevant. And that's why we thought maybe art has to come into place. And we developed several instruments, and this is one of them that was in Serbia last year. And the one thing, I forgot to tell, we want to measure the color of the sky on museum roofs to make, the idea is to make the museum part of a measuring campaign, and also to emphasize that the color of the sky is human-made and should be collected in the museum. And the instrument we build now is just cameras, but they're cleaned every morning, and they have this lid, because it's difficult to maintain an instrument on a museum roof, and that's kind of the idea. So, and this was the piece we showed in the exhibition. So on the left side, you see the video. It's kind of a stop motion video, and on the right side, there's an interview with Vladimir, who's joining us below. A very interesting interview. So this is kind of the presentation. And I show you now as a last short clip, one video, if it works. And it's an interesting one because you see the human-made sky very much. This is contrails, and you see how they getting larger and larger, and in the end, kind of cover all of the sky. This is not in Serbia. This is in Zurich on a roof. So this is one of our latest works. We just ended a series of talks with in a church with a painted sky, and we're talking about a man-made sky with the climate scientists and theologists. Oh, is this right? People who are like church history people. So this is it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Roman, for this cross-section of your work, and it was really great to have an overview. And thanks for mentioning this collaboration between scientists, because Vladimir is already there with us and one of the initiators of Green Earth Incubator. So it's yes. So we will talk more about this. If there are now some immediate questions, I saw already there was the late one from Duška Dimović for Kika, and she answered in chat, but we'll come back to that. Now, if there are some questions for Roman, please go ahead. Okay, I don't see, maybe there will be afterwards, we'll continue the debate after the presentations. Now, last but not least is Mirko Nikolić. I could say that Mirko is both, like, let's say, artist, activist, and researcher, and he strives to work towards the climate and environmental justice through writing, performance, and campaigning. Since 2015, his principal focus has been tracing the impact of extractivist expansions. So extractivism is one of the key points in his research, especially in Sweden, where he's based, but also in southern and mostly in Southern Europe and most notably in Serbia. So Mirko is also active in a number of collective organizations or artistic collectives, such as Mustarinda, organization based in Finland, and Pluriversal Radio Collective. And as a researcher, he holds a PhD from the University of Westminster in London, and currently works on a research project, Water is Non-Life, which is ongoing. And I hope that Mirko will tell us more about it, because it's also affiliated with his teaching position at the Institute for Culture and Society at Linköping University, yes, in Sweden, where he's based at the moment. So Mirko, please, your presentation is now on.
Thanks, Zoran. Thanks, Roman. Thanks, Kiki, for the presentations, and everyone that preceded. I'll pick up on some threads, actually, I hope. And first, I'll share the share screen. Second, show the presentation. Okay, here. Okay, is it there? Sort of, yeah. Okay.
Yes, it's okay.
So, yeah, as Zoran said, I'll actually today talk only about this ongoing artistic research project and share some findings. So essentially, the backdrop is it is my own thinking aloud, and along with communities and movements and lots of other people that are inside this discussion, which is about how do we concretely, turn down the that hockey stick, as we saw at the beginning of the day. And in most scenarios or feasible solutions, of course, it implies we're not taking into consideration those really burn it all. But yeah, it implies some sort of decarbonization or going into fossil fuel society. And the main way how to do this is by moving to low carbon technologies. which mostly means actually technologies based on minerals. So in some ways, what we're seeing as proposed by the governments, especially in the global north, and the business and the industry, is a large-scale rapid shift to renewables and lower carbon, which means mostly moving to metal-intensive technologies. However, I'd like to introduce into our debates also the concept of material footprint, which I think has been, which many think has been somewhat in the background. And this implies actually looking at all possible materials that being used, and this is some data on the EU consumption levels, which are well above the so-called fair share. And this is the kind of the tricky part. In order to increase metal-intensive cleaner technologies, this implies more metals and implies mostly more mining, more processing of minerals. And this is some of the relevant. There are many projections, but it's a projection of the International Energy Agency, which show that by 2040, to achieve these goals and commitments, actually there would be an increase between 3 and 4 times the use of minerals as in 2020. And this is some projections looking at the amount of batteries, but this is a bit less known. And this is how essentially the risk on biodiversity and nature, broadly speaking, of all this will be. And this is a map which kind of looks at the mineral deposits in relation to nature conservation areas and so forth. So what's shaping up, and it's really like one of those major questions. It's only kind of surfacing now in some ways. Is that actually to save the climate, more nature will need to be sacrificed to simplify the equation, because like all mining operations, and to some extent produce damage in nature, and then we have the processing and so forth, and then the manufacturing of batteries and all the tech, and most of this has been well known. However, what's the actual point I want to bring our attention is this curve, that actually it's what is required in some ways is actually another, well, one could say almost like a hockey stick. So it kind of uncannily reminds us of one of those great acceleration graphs, that actually the amount of materials mined, processed, and used is going to increase. So this is the kind of one of the major contradictions of our moment, I would say. And there is absolutely no easy way to think about this. But however, how I think about this and many others is this other map, which actually shows that it's just one of the many possible ways to look at it. But it shows, for example, some of the environmental justice conflicts around the extraction concretely of minerals. So as we also are well sharply aware now in Serbia, for example, with the controversy and the struggle around the lithium borate project in West Serbia, Rio Tinto's Jadar project, lots will get to be sacrificed if this capacity is to be built, and especially so quickly and so rapidly as a kind of direct response. And now to go back to the first graph, in many ways, all these scenarios are based actually on the idea that in a way there will be just a substitution. So the energy production will be substituted and everyone will live kind of the same. And in a way, we would still have hundreds of millions, or actually 2 billion electric vehicles by 2050. So this is like, the idea is actually, what does it take to substitute all that we have today that is fossil fuel with metal-intensive tech, which is cleaner. And that's like really exactly having, and it's going to have major impacts on livelihoods and nature across the globe. And so I've been doing a series of, let's say, the performances, but also in a way, real like solo meditations on these issues and specific spots. So this is the actual first one in this series, and actually it starts from the overview effect, which was taking place there. Roman and Zoran were also involved, of course, and many others. So this was performed in late 2020, in the first wave of Corona, when we gathered at a confluence of Sava and Danube, and where I read the first cycle of, let's say, poetic thoughts around this, together with Aquafit bioremediating plants. And this is a spot which many of you are aware, but why it's important, I think, is not only because I'm from Belgrade and it's a nice view at the castle there and so forth, but because actually it's downstream from the other project, which is upstream, going Sava, Drina, and Jadar. So then this kind of continued the year after in a bit different format, when over several days, actually, there was like a small public forum on this beach, again, the same place, close to the Museum of Contemporary Art in Belgrade, and at the confluence of Sava and Danube rivers, where again, there were some plant co-workers, I would say here, doing some minimal bioremediation of the, already very problematic waters there for different reasons, not only mining, but actually mostly, Belgrade has other water processing issues. So the practice has been looking at exactly the expansion of mining or proposed expansion of mining in Southeast Europe or Serbia, and what are the effects of it and actual possible alternatives. But on the other hand, I live in diaspora now in Sweden, and it has been about bringing the news here. So on the one hand, it's been a lot about bringing, let's say, the news also to Balkans, because it's about actually looking at this larger picture, which I showed at the beginning, also that the EU's, for example, plans and projects about massive mining expansion and so forth. And again, alternatives, looking at actually degrowth, post-growth. But on the other hand, it's also been about bringing the news from Southeast Europe to the north. And this is another action that we did last autumn in a nature reserve area, which is next to our largest underground limestone mine in Europe, and this is in southern Norway. So again, you'll hear maybe a bit of how it sounds at the end. And this was actually at an old mine in Stockholm Archipelago, which is an iron mine. It's not operating for more than 100 years, but however, it was part of this lithium festival that some colleagues organized, and actually it's the place where lithium was discovered in 200 years ago. So it was also a very strong spot to actually reflect on all these issues and to actually tell stories of Jadar and others. And this is just very small snapshot of the ongoing work, which is literally like taking the news from Sweden to Serbia and back, and it's looking actually at the extent of Swedish investments in polluting companies in Serbia. And this is an action that happened in Borska Reka, which is the river downstream from ZG Mining's Bor mines in East Serbia, copper and gold mines. And again, copper is here also very important because it's one of the keystone actually metals for electrification. So beyond all the battery materials, what's often overlooked slightly is that actually energy transitions as they are proposed today are actually implied mining almost all metals to an extent never seen before in history. And actually this implies also not only cobalt, nickel, lithium, and the rare earths, which are very much in the news, but also expansion of iron, copper, aluminum, and all the other, let's say, base metals. So that was just a very quick run through, and I'll just pass it on to Vukašin, who might say just a snapshot of the actual storytelling piece, so we can get an idea. Thanks. Vukašin.
Roba putuje na sever, sirova sa visoravni. Hiljade radnika ima zadatak da suši slane doline da bi ispumpalo što više laganog metala koji bi trebalo da obezbedi ležernu mobilnost, konektivnost posle kraja fosilnih goriva. Vožnje i igrarije u gradovima prebogatog severa i duž poluperiferije. Prodaju nam uređaje, očišćena vozila koje tvrde nula emisija. Umjesto zelenog zaokreta, mnogi životi su pravo zgaženi na nulu. Ekrane i točkovi teških mašina utiskuju nove slojeve nasilja. Troše beton, mirisa ulja zasecaju nesvesne vrhove prstiju. Kroz guste ekrane očutkivanja, kakvu pesmu bismo da ispevamo, da podelimo, da ne zaboravimo. 60 automobila na 100 stanovnika, ovde ili bilo gde, ne voze nas van klimatske krize. Da ispevamo da se ne delimo, na neke koji gaze putem i druge koje put gaze. Odnosi počinju slušanjem. Pitate da li su istraživači i planeri slušali velike tetrebove, potočne puževe, Heldu. Sve koji čine ovo mesto jednim jedinstvenim delom svega. Mnoge kuće nisu zamenljive, kroz bilo kakve fer i poštene scheme. Kakva je to dozvola za premeštanje? Neka pitanja se ne mogu s poštovanjem postaviti. Neki pristanci se ne mogu dobiti. Carstvo i kapital ne znaju da govore, da nauče jezike zemlje, zajedništva, zadrugarstva, drugarstva. Pre i posle carstva, njihovih brana, kopova, raskačenih šuma, izvan žice i ćelija, mi nemamo cene. Ne svodimo se ni na čije mere, proračune, vaganja, balans negativnih uticaja i dobitaka. Za koga? Ne markirajte nas kao dobitna smeša. Ekonomična kombinacija grafita, nikla, kobalta, litijuma, bakra. Prirodan resurs, to jest jeftina priroda. Ljudska, životinjska, metalična snaga u službi napretka na nečiji drugi račun. Ne zaboravljamo, ti drugi smo, ćemo uvek biti. Ti ili ja, ti i ja.
Thanks, Mirko. Please, you can unmute yourself.
Thanks for question for playing. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and especially for this video clip that shows a lot about your work and your approach that I sometimes always have to emphasize uses words and poetry in relations to the context that you're researching upon. So if there are any direct and immediate questions to Mirko, I would be encouraging you to share it in chat, or just you can raise your hand, or you can unmute yourself. Please, this will be the beginning of our debate. And I would kindly ask then also Kika and Roman to unmute yourself, so we can start. There was a question by Duška Dimović in chat. Maybe Kika, would you like to extend on that? Because this could be a really good starting point. Mm-hmm. Does your work include conservation as a specific topic? And there's also the topic of biodiversity that was mentioned. Mm-hmm. And how do you relate to it? More specifically, you answered to it, and because you pinpointed the practice of Mary Mattingly and the waste issue. So do you have experience related to biodiversity? So you answered already in chat, but maybe this is a good starting point then to find, as I mentioned, some kind of sore points, and this could be a relation between waste limits and how does it refer to the art world. So please, Kika, would like to extend on this question. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Well, to tell you the truth, the original focus of our art collection and of the projects that we've been producing has been waste and waste management. The reason for that is because we have this sort of specific expertise that we acquire from the group of companies that have actually been the founders of PCI, that is to say Polyeco and Polygreen. These are waste management companies. And we ourselves as the curators, but also the artists themselves, have access to the scientific labs that are within those two group of environmental companies. That is to say, throughout the years and through the projects that we've been developing, we got to work hand in hand with scientists, and we've been able to develop projects that focus on this specific topic. Nevertheless, we've been dealing also with the various other aspects and environmental concerns, and biodiversity has been one of them. It's been a late concern of ours, to tell you the truth, but we've been specifically commissioning artists and on the occasion of the Sheltered Garden exhibition. This is a very precious area in Athens for us. It's actually one of the most important botanical gardens in the Western actually in the Mediterranean, and it is placed within a forest. It has been the home for many animals that's been extinct, for many all sorts of fauna and flora. And through the exhibition and through other projects that we plan to organize there, we intend to raise awareness for this very important natura habitat, let's say. So yes, I don't know if this answers your question, but we definitely want to extend our researches and our concerns to other areas as well.
Great, thanks. I believe, yes, this is really the answer to the question that was posed on chat. And I would like to take up on this issue of waste, because we've been discussing a lot, especially in the theory of degrowth, usually tend to emphasize the words of Serge Latouche that we reach the age of limits, so we cannot produce more and bigger cars, bigger refrigerators, bigger airplanes, and not produce the biggest amount of waste as well. So this was one of the accents in the work of Mary Mattingly. She realized, it's a good example, she realized that she has too much clothes, that she doesn't need all that clothes. And then she put them in a bundle, and her work is also called Blockades, Bundles, etc., etc. And and she carried the waste like Sisyphus, some kind of effort to carry all this waste that is not necessary, but is showing the overproduction. So another aspect of this work is that most of the items that she'll analyze later were produced and outsourced in Southeast Asia, for example, in Malaysia or Indonesia, etc., etc. So she started to detect the abuse of child labor in production of these items that she was buying as a consumer, and to analyze all the aspects of consumption of different, let's say, objects of like fashion, etc., or maybe ordinary clothes that you need for everyday life. And she was not coming from, let's say, the money, but from the wealth, and she was really modest in her attitude. And she wanted to bear the burden of all this, what was happening. And interesting enough for me would be the question for all of you: do you think that this could be made as a metaphor also for the art world? Do we reach really the phase of overconsumption of art manifestations, of cultural events, of biennials, of many different formats? Is it really necessary, so to say, without taking precautions and measures about sustainability guidelines, as we call them, what we analyze in the toolkit that was presented beforehand? So what do you think? This is a question for all. Yeah. Kika first, of course. Yeah, please.
Yes, of course. Well, to tell you the truth, this has been also a concern of ours, and this is something that I've been discussing a lot with other curators and directors of various institutions that we've been working with, how we can actually reduce the carbon footprint of all our activities, particularly if you have a collection, a collection, let's say. When you need to exhibit the works or even conserve the works, the energy spent there, or the resources used can be very harmful, very impactful. So we've been actually, trying to sort of develop a kind of toolkit, let's say, or to sort of try to browse through different toolkits on how to be able to sort of control, if not reduce, let's say, the carbon footprint of your day-to-day activities. I know that there have been some very interesting examples and case studies in the past of exhibitions and of events that have managed to do so, or at least that they have managed to sort of, write down, put down the amount of waste that has been sort of, accumulated through their practices. But I think if we start, let's say, by sort of controlling all that, eventually we will, hopefully manage to find some solutions there and become more concerned.
Thanks. Roman, what would you say?
I think it's an important but difficult question, because we always, Christina, we say, is it worse the CO2? Is it worse to do that? Is it, we came to Belgrade with our biogas fueled car, but there's still a lot of rubber coming off the tires and everything. So I think that if we live in this society at the moment, it's nearly impossible to not pollute, to not be part of this economy. On the other side, I think an artwork could be a very efficient thing to cultivate, or also to conserve an idea, and some of the artworks that we do may be important even in 200 years. So then it could be really worse, the energy. Also, I don't know, we went to Jimmy Carter's interview with the plane, of course. We spent 2 weeks, and we tried to cover a lot of more interviews, not just that half an hour with him. But it's difficult to say if it was worth the CO2 to fly over and do this work. We don't know. Yeah. It's very difficult. And
no, that's a question of, let's say, individual carbon footprint and individual artistic position, and the general overview of the whole system and the art system in this question. That was like, maybe my following question will be in your individual work, but maybe it's just to extend it a bit into the this relationship with scientists and science, like CERN. Like this is like really mass consumption of energy and mass production of waste and whatever, like, yeah. How do you see this collaboration then? Like, how is it benefiting, let's say, the art world? This scientific devices that are really mandatory for research in. Vladimir will know much better about these aspects of the research, but yeah, your experience, what would be beneficial from the art community?
Well, that scholarship at CERN was very special. Actually, we only stayed there for 1 month due to COVID, not the 3 months we were expecting. So it's still not finished. Well, CERN is really crazy energy-wise. I think it's if it's running, it takes the energy of a small town. It's really a lot of energy. They switch down the important research now early because of the winter and of the energy situation in Europe. So they stopped early. But to be honest, it's a very crazy place to be, and I think also for scientists, because I think everybody has a little smile and say, wow, this is so crazy that we're doing this. This incredible infrastructure to find out things about particles and the physics, which is, there's no direct reason, it's very important that I think it's a collective, in a way, waste of energy to find out. And I think everybody is a little bit touched by this effort. So for us, it was like gymnastics in the brain. You go to all these experiments and you see, wow, it's unbelievable. And I think it was one of the most exotic things I've seen in my life, and it was great. But yes, COVID was stopping that. The CERN is between France and Switzerland, and they had to comply with all the Bose regulations. So we couldn't stay there anymore for the last 2 years. So this is still an open issue. But yeah, in the manifesto we wrote in 2006, we wrote we have to find out new ways to waste, and because it's fun to waste, and the CERN is like a collective waste on a human scale. It's just incredible.
Okay, great. Thanks. And you have some kind of comment that thank you, Roman, from Sanya on the chat. Thank you, Roman, for using humor in your work that is more than serious. And then we go to Mirko in the same comment. Thank you, Mirko, for the powerful video and poetry. So maybe now, Mirko, it's your turn to answer to the most difficult question. Probably there are even more difficult questions, but maybe what will be your angle? And please unmute yourself.
Well, yeah, I suppose what we're doing here today, it's, to pick up what Roman said. Yeah, there are this collective waste of energy. How do we actually collectivize? And it was said also in the morning, in the Green Art Incubator. I mean, the whole day, actually, of course, like now we know that individual action produce effect, but actual change comes from, like, let's call it, from organizations. And yeah, that's what I'm actually mostly, like, I suppose, interested in. So, like, effectively, what the social techniques that we need, or to actually achieve or to work towards justice transformation of into a post-fossil society. And so in that sense, I think actually, waste, it's like, that's what also, like, one of the tough learnings, I guess, is also that there is no zero carbon actual tech. There is like net zero maybe emerging, like, in terms of big industry, but again, it's not real zero, what we would say. But and also there is no industrial process without waste. And of course, full circularity is, like, we are well far from that, even if it would be possible. So I think it's really about this collective decision making. How do we actually decide what's really important and what's not? And do we want to have CERN and as a collective effort to actually do this, which I think is a very great example. And what kind of, but I guess it also it has to do also with culture. Like, actually, responding to your question, actually, there were some colleagues from my university who were doing some research on the footprint. I think it was actually Stockholm, and then they established that actually about, I think it was like 1 ton of CO2 yearly, like goes on sport and culture or leisure, let's say, including sport, which is also very relevant now in the phase of Qatar spectacle, fossil fuel spectacle. So I think that's very interesting to actually put in the perspective as well, that as well in the morning, like cinema, streaming, and that's, I'm really interested in, digital infrastructure, footprints and so forth. I mean, Netflixing and so forth. Now we have some data with zooming as well. It is, all cause effects, of course. But yeah, it's about how do we talk about them and actually take specific pathways and scenarios, right? And that's, I think, where I really think that culture, together with science, can do quite a lot to actually share this knowledge and actual empowerment to actually take decisions or be part of decisions. And, because I don't think that in this moment, that's like really this specific kind of moment in probably history that actually, there is some space, very small space, but actually that, like, in a way, everyone can jump on board still and kind of predetermine what's going on, what's going to happen in the next 10, 20, 50, 100 years. Because also what I think is really keenly interesting in all these, let's say, industrial scenarios, like I showed you one, like, which was EIA's, like 24, 2050, even EU targets and so forth, everything is based on 2030, 2040, 2050. But then almost it seems like there is no like future, but actually now, because we are in such an intense state of affairs, I think this thing that actually it's really important to see 2100, 200, 300 and so forth. And that's again where I think imagination and imaginaries and all the traditional cultural tools are really great alongside the climate modeling and all the other, like, the sciences, of course.
Thanks. Yes, there are two different approaches to the whole set of questions. It's impossible to get a grasp of the abundance of issues that we could raise. But one, let's put it in a very simple way. One idea, maybe even of this whole conference, is to find some, let's say, positive tendencies, good practices and case studies, and some, let's say, possibilities for the art to give an example, for the artists to be like these pillars that will, let's say, like in the avant-garde, that it will shake the society and ask some kind of questions that are needed to be asked and overtly go to public. And but there's also the role of the institutions. So sometimes Mirko and I, when we discussed a lot, we tend to be more into this kind of more into these apocalyptic scenarios, etc., etc. But let's try to find some, let's say, positive angle. And Kika, you're also part and a member of the ICOM, the Association of Museums. That is very important. At least also it was for me, and it's CIMAM as well, the Association of Museums of Contemporary Art, where I was member for many years. And both of this, I mean, they're part of the same body, so to say, but both of them produced also toolkits and gave instructions to the institutions how to fight and how to prepare for the climate crisis. So for me, this is one aspect, this is a good question. There are many recommendations that, for example, you should focus more, don't work on the collection, you shouldn't kind of do so many traveling shows, you should try to produce, let's say, the exhibitions in a sustainable way, you should try to take care about the, let's say, energy efficiency of the whole building. And there are many aspects, but there is also the question of relation to the local art scene and the relation to the production of the works itself and how does it happen, and the prolongation of the duration of the exhibitions, not to an exhibition that lasts 2 weeks. It's really a waste of money and time, and what's in it for the artist. So this is like, there are many issues that are raised in this toolkits. So the question is, like, are the institutions and how are you relating in your, let's say, institution or organization towards those problems, and how do you implement some of these ideas? How do you travel the works from the collection, and how do you think about all this? And maybe, we can expand on that further.
Well, to tell you the truth, in Athens, we don't have our own venue. We only have the Delphi venue, which we recently sort of acquired.
Yes.
So it's been, quite a challenge for us to try to navigate originally this sort of topic without the right toolkit. And I know that there are quite a few organizations out there who have been doing it for quite some years now. For instance, there is the Julie's Bicycle charity, in case you are aware of it, a London-based charity that has been focusing on providing this sort of consultation, let's say, to arts institutions. And they also work sometimes hand in hand with institutions in getting them, let's say, green certified. Nevertheless, we feel that because we're sort of unconventional institution, we don't have a venue, we have an annual program, and around the annual program that we design, we sort of decide which the venues will be each time. We feel that it would be wiser to develop our own toolkit, let's say, and or gather the information of various toolkits, just like the ones you mentioned, the ones provided by CIMA and ICOM, or even Julie's Bicycle, and to try to sort of implement it on our day-to-day practices, on our specific activities. I don't have at the moment any specific data, to tell you the truth, or any answers there, because it's still a process. But we've definitely, for instance, considered very seriously on reducing traveling as much as possible. Also, the fact that the majority, let's say, of the artworks that we've been commissioning focuses on film and moving image. Although, I mean, energy-wise, this can be something that might be rather impactful when you wish to exhibit a work like that. Conservation-wise, though, it's something, that it's less harmful to the environment. So what I'm trying to say is that all these concerns have also affected very specific decisions that sometimes have to do with what type of works we should commission, or what kind of projects we should work with or partner for. So we, of course, take into account what other institutions have been doing and whether they've been successful on that or not. But we feel that we need a very specific toolkit, in our case, to sort of try to implement and work with.
Yes, and maybe about the residencies, maybe this is a good example. Could you give us more, let's say, feedback on that? On the program on the island, yeah? How do you work with the artists in the community? This is maybe a good, just to extend a bit on that,
Yes. In regards to what happened actually on the island of Tilos, this is a project in process there. Tilos actually has been an island in Greece that the municipality and the periphery of the islands of the Dodekanis have decided to implement a zero waste program. This has happened actually with the help of Polygreen. Polygreen has actually been the company that provided the facilities and the sort of scientific expertise to do that on the island. And it has been a process, or a 2-year process, as far as I know, of educating and working with the community there on how they could reduce their waste, learn to recycle the waste. For instance, in the past on the island, there has been this landfill where everyone, there hadn't been a proper, sort of waste management facilities on the specific island. So the landfill has actually been removed, and now they have recycling facilities there. And around this program that has been taking place on the island for quite some time now, we've been invited to sort of design an artist in residence program. So we decided to invite designers, industrial designers, but also contemporary artists, to sort of visit the island, talk with the community, find out more about their concerns, the difficulties perhaps that they had to deal with going through this process, because I mean it's a process of changing your mentality as well, and also they were also invited, if they wish, to create works of art using as their prime matter the materials that were sort of collected on the island. So both residencies have now been completed, and the outcome of the residency and the studios are there. I mean, during the residency, the studios, the artist studios, were almost open every day. The islanders were invited, you know, to speak with the artists, found out more about the work that was done there. And we are actually now planning an event that will also take the form of an exhibition in Athens to present the outcome to a broader audience in Athens. Because Tilos is a very small island, it's a very beautiful island, but it's a very small island. So we feel that the outcome of the particular residency should be also presented in Athens, and it should also become a continuous, let's say, project, you know. So we intend to invite more artists this year as well, and continue working with the municipality and the periphery there.
Okay, great. Now I'll try to, let's say, put some contradiction in relation to the legislation that even United Nations are providing with this sustainability goals, and also they usually say that culture and arts are the fourth pillar of this, as we use abbreviation SDGs. Yeah. But then the priority of European Union was for many years in their culture program the mobility of the artist, you know. Now everything is changed, everything has changed, and now we have to think in terms of mobility, but yeah, in a virtual way, you know. The pandemic of Corona shifted, as we are now all in Zoom, shifted our way of thinking in those relations, because previously all the cultural programs like Creative Europe, etc., artistic mobility was the key point, and it was really perceived as mandatory for an artist to go from A to B to see and experience different places, venues that will inspire his or her work. So how to now reconcile these two things, you know, like, yeah, the mobility need and the question that we should really, even in terms of curatorial practice, work more on distance, you know, even virtually curate an exhibition, you know, like, yeah, which happened in numerous cases, even in Mori Museum, etc., etc. So this is the question for the artist. Maybe how do you see this in your work, you know, for Roman and Mirko? How do you see this, and how do you reconcile? Thanks. Also on a personal level, but maybe on a level of responding to usually not say the climate crisis, but eco-social crisis, you know. How do you respond to this maybe more narrow context that is defining our way of living? So it's a complex question. I don't know if you got the whole idea covered, but yeah, maybe you could add something, because Roman, you mentioned maybe some artistic ideas will be valuable after 200 years. Maybe they will be used for the benefit of the, I don't know, the new inventions in, yeah, any field, in any other sector, if I got it right.
Actually, I would like to say something to the institutions first, because, you know, yeah, sure. I was studying environmental science in the late 80s, early 90s, and many of my friends went to became like consultants. Some of them went to the Swiss banks because they had to write this environmental paper beginning in the 90s, and they all found out that they should use different copiers, reduce heat in the night. So the banks, they earned a lot of money with this. You know, the consultant was worth millions for them, because they could, you know, it was the first time people looked at this. try to reduce lighting, and there were so many low-hanging fruits that this was worth million. And then of course the discussion started to shift, not to this internal ecology. As you know, now the issue is where the money is invested, and this is the much bigger
Of course.
thing to discuss. And from this point of view, it's a bit surprising that this discussion in the museum is starting in the 2020s. So like 30 years later, we discussing about this internal ecological things, which I think is good. I think it's probably a lot of museum can spend less on energy if somebody looks at details and knows how to switch off. And I'm sure some of the collections, they have to separate the pieces that really need the climate thing, and others who don't need it. Probably most of it don't need it. Look how artists collect their art. They're mostly not. They're most not in these conditions. And I think this is one part of it. I think it's okay that the museum has somebody in charge and write an Umweltbericht in German. But the big question also there is, in what art do you invest? It's this is kind of a provocation, but that's the big question. What's the values we're going to see for the next 200 years in museums? And we all know it's more important that we do the right political decisions as a member of the society. That will be the most efficient way to lower our footprint. So how is a museum trying to shift the values in this direction? That would be the big question.
Definitely, yeah, that's important. Yeah, Mirko.
Yeah, maybe I can pick on those points or an open one more if that's okay. But so yeah, lots could be said actually, of course, on the on greenwashing and so forth. But what I'm interested in really is just to add that in a way, what I think also practices today, but many others as well. And I think there is really the question of knowledge here. And for example, what I'm interested in, it's one of the possible implications of, let's say, this kind of networked or rhizomatic expansion of contemporary art across the globe is also that it has to do with cartography. And what I mean is exactly that, what Jameson maybe called in 90s cognitive cartography, or I would call it maybe in my case more affective cartography. So actually that it is all about homework and housework, and it's a way also responds to your initial question sort of about is it too much production? And I do think it's too much production in almost all sectors of society in the global north and its semi-peripheries. But what I mean is by that is actually, in a way, I do think also Roman raised this point about, should we take that trip or not? I don't have an answer for that, but I think that actually cartography is exactly this. So what does it mean that effectively, if you have the tools and capacity and privilege to do this kind of work, sometimes it is also I would say, what happens when actually one does see and then cannot unsee anymore the direct connections, for example, between my own practice and I don't know, extraction zones of copper, in maybe East Serbia, or cobalt in Democratic Republic of Congo, or lithium that's coming in from Chile today, and so forth. So and there are many ways of thinking about this and traveling. So yeah, I do think that in a way, this kind of, I would call them, unwanted and undesired connections. No one ever asked me, to be involved with hundreds of these places where manufacturing or producing is going on. And of course, and obviously I cannot sort almost any of that on my own. However, I do think that cartography and artists have some ability, they're cultural workers, but also knowledge workers, I would say. It means that if one is able to engage with these places through traveling or not, because there are many other ways also to connect, as you said, virtually today. I do think I'm really interested in how we can encourage some sort of, citizen processes around this, and actually confronting these realities with whom and we are already connected, mostly without knowing, and confronting them actually, through what Tiana actually raised in the morning already, with responsibility and accountability and solidarity, and this is again, as to do now with science specific and the kind of, let's say, feminist critique of science, if it is the fact that, my faith is somehow inextricably, to some extent tied to, for example, this deposit there, and it is. And, one can definitely easily pack back, for example, in Serbia, go to Jadar, or go to Bormajda, or go to Smeder, or go to Zrenjanin, or go to Stara Planina, and so forth. And I mean, it's just these encounters, actually. I don't know, now we can think about, project making, object making, and community turning. But I think that these encounters, and like this one today, I mean, that's the key, because really it's like once we are in that mode of mobility, which is really about seeking relations of solidarity, accountability, ability to respond. And this always means some sort of building collective-ish, collectivizing or community making. I think that's kind of really then opens up to all sorts of yes, let's say good practice and solutions, and all the good practice come from that, from meetings, I would suppose. And, I think that academia has really great capacities there in some ways, because, for example, climate science is actually one of the first, actually global networks of knowledge in history. And likewise, scientists have been able to, even though, there is all sorts of problems with funding and, lots of science has been and is involved in, military and so forth, and all the stuff that's also unwanted. But however, science has been able to build a global network of knowledge. And again, that's the issue of access, and there is now struggles around open access. And likewise, I would say that around internet today, we are locked in a specific ecology of internet, which is definitely very destructive. However, it's possible to change it. Likewise, art and its relation to private property has been historically and still is extremely, I would say, complicated and problematic. But again, I think we have the tools now to actually look at how we can open this access, and the infrastructures are there, and many of them are ruins of the fossil fuel system, in a way, as you say, art, residency, mobility. And I'm engaged, as some of with one of the residencies dealing with these issues. In a way, it's like you find yourself in the midst of actually kind of a ruin in a way already, because it's been set up in 30 years, and we're all happy and great. Actually, some of us, very few actually of people were able to travel and stuff, but now we already realize that actually it's already some kind of a specter of something else. But then we have the tools, and we've met people, some have met people, there's lots of connections that we can think through this, and we have to do this, as we're doing now, right?
Yeah, thanks, Mirko. I think we should slowly start wrapping up. I don't know if there are any questions from any side or from the organizers. Maybe we have so many things to cover, but it's impossible. There are some key words that keep popping up to my mind, like Kika and all the examples show that education is very much appreciated and it's needed, both for institutions and for the whole system. You also all mentioned the need for education. Mirko, you mentioned the need for solidarity, need to unite in certain way, to use this word common, communality. And Roman, you emphasized, then problematized, the late response of the institutions. Some of them started very early, but some of them very late to consider that the climate changes, as Vladimir said, are happening, already for a long period, and we're very late in responding to them, in any way. So I would just add my, let's say, 6 pence or how many pence, I don't know, 5 cents, whatever you want. By saying that what is needed is we need really a paradigm shift, a total paradigm shift, if we want to change anything. And this is for me, on one side, the fight for environmental justice and climate justice, as Mirko also was mentioning, and the other side against this, what I call CPC, or not what I call, but what is called CPC, communism, capitalism, colonialism, and patriarchalism, or the other way around, whatever you want to call it, you know, like let's say colonialism, patriarchalism, and capitalism. So you can use two different ways for this abbreviation. So, but here, I mean also like new mutations of capitalism, but also new colonialism and everything that is happening nowadays. But this could be an ongoing discussion. So what would be maybe your final words, your final comment on the possibilities, how to cope with all this, not just kind of environmental problems, but also like social problems within our practice, within our common practice in the field of visual arts, as this is our, let's say, realm, so to say, and then how to combine it in a transdisciplinary way with other disciplines, you know. So maybe just some kind of conclusion, and I would really appreciate if there would be any answer from the organizers, or questions, even better. Yeah. So anyone, please, maybe the same order if you want, Kika. Please unmute yourself. Yeah.
What
Yeah,
you
no, it's
just mentioned about the paradigm shift for me is important as well. Yes, because I think from time to time, you know, we tend to think what we should do as individuals, but of course, I mean, Mirko mentioned before, I mean, there are all these sort of cases of greenwashing, the industries, you know, and their sort of responsibility on the particular topic that sometimes we intentionally or unintentionally sort of tend to neglect. So this, of course, does not mean, you know, that the individual, that each one of us shouldn't be concerned, but again, this is a very broad problem. And I think that the shift you just mentioned should be, you know, the way to go towards that, to work towards that.
Okay, thanks. Roman, your main point was where the money is directed. You know, this is the question, the biggest question of all questions. Yeah.
Not only, I think that the biggest question
not
is
only, of course,
how we as a collective, as a global collective, organize us in the future. I think it's a longer lasting process. But you know, you probably know that the footprint thing was invented by British Petrol, and you know, I think it's the only field where there's a lot of emphasis to put the responsibility on the single person, which is true. And we are also from a religious background. I think we know this Schuldgefühl to be concerned. But you know, in the end, I think we're not, as a human being, we're not good in an anxious position, and we're also not good if we try to just save and to not do it, to limit ourselves. So I think there's kind of, sometimes I have the feeling we need a cynical optimism, you know, knowing that it's not the best thing we do at the moment, but we have to be optimistic. It's the only, I think, way to get ahead, you know. And this is something I think maybe art can also support.
That's positive thinking. Yeah. I'm post-pessimist, so to say. I'm sorry. Joking, sorry. Yeah, thanks, Roman. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Mirko?
Well, yeah, I suppose to be really generous and be able to listen among those of who are already committed to climate and environmental justice, and of course trying to bring as many as possible people on board now. So this means being generous, of course, and of course being also very tough on some other things. But yeah, I think generosity, because in a way, I think in many ways we are in an uncharted territory and humans have never lived on this kind of planet ever in history. So yeah, think it's really about listening and finding possible paths together.
That's a good point, yes, as well. We need to think together and to find possible alternatives. So I deliberately, if you notice, didn't mention your places of residence. Your I just think, maybe that's not even needed to be said. You said yourself, but I would like to thank you very much because yes, another thing is we need to really think beyond the Eurocentric point of view. That's what I would add. Maybe at the end, we need to really expand the way of thinking into, let's say, indigenous cultures and their sovereignty, etc., and to different positions. And it opened up many possible avenues. But I'm really grateful for your contributions, for your great presentations, and for your thoughts. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you. And now finally, if there are any questions, I would like to ask the organizers or anyone who is listening still. I see some people there. So the final chance to ask our three wonderful presenters, and yes, if there are no
just from on the behalf of the Green Art Incubator team to
okay,
thank you to all of you for this very inspiring presentation and also conversation with very important thoughts for us. So thanks again.
Yeah, I wanted
Okay,
also to thank you on your thoughts and words. And I have a question for all participants. Can you give us a little teaser of your next work for the next year in a couple of sentences? Just what can we expect from you in next year?
right.
Well, we are actually planning a series of residencies, as we gradually getting out of the pandemic. So the residency program has been a focus for us. So we have various residencies taking place on the island of Tilos, focusing on the upcycling topic in the area of Delphi, and in Athens as well. And also a new area for us has been the area of performing arts. We intend to work with a larger extent of artists from the performing arts field. We also have a new exhibition coming up, which will hopefully take place in the end. But we've been quite glad that going gradually out of the pandemic and the digital sort of getting together to meeting again and to be able to produce project where we can meet each other. Although, to tell you the truth, we feel that the hybrid format at some point can be helpful and less impactful. So we intend to keep it as much as possible in most of our projects, continue having this sort of hybrid format in the projects that we produce whenever possible.
Great.
Is it my turn? Yeah.
Yes, Roman, please.
Well, actually, we had a very busy 2 years now, and we have the great opportunity to be in a residency in London for 6 months next year. It's very, we're so thankful to have a break in a way and be away. And yes, we go there by train. It's quite possible from Zurich. And other than that, we in the beginning of this man-made sky project, we were working together with scientists in London. So this will probably be the first thing to do, to contact them again. Other than that, we don't know, which is so great.
Okay. And Mirko?
Yeah, next year. So definitely, I hope to be able to share some well, it's never gonna be wrapped up, I suppose, but some final thoughts on this at least. Research project and looking at, yeah, specifically what brings North Europe and the Balkans or Serbia, what brings rivers and mountains and people together and apart to get today. And, you know, maybe hopefully there's some lines of action also that we can take somehow to make these connections a bit stronger and more just. And that's, so yeah, and I will be telling and sharing these stories, of course, in Belgrade and Smederevo, Bor, and yeah, some places that are impacted in Serbia. And of course, I do hope to meet you, all of you, more, and yeah, that we continue this next year. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. So then, yeah, I would call it a wrap, and I would thank one more time Kika, Roman, Mirko, and Jovana, Nadia, of course, and Vladimir, and thanks for having us. And I believe it was really, at least for me, inspiring to talk to all of you. And yeah, now you have a break, I understand, and there's a continuation to follow. Thanks again to all, and I wish you all the best for the remaining of the day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we will be back at 3 for the next session.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.